Hi, I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is vlog number 88. This is the vlog where I talk about quarterly stories, which is my graphic novel that I hand write, hand letter, hand ink, and then hand to you. Hopefully someday in print, but until that day it's available serialized online at quarterlystories.com for your reading enjoyment, where you can read it all the way up to page 49, which I'm currently penciling. This is the vlog where I document the process and progress of creating that graphic novel on top of being a full-time art director, full-time illustrator, and a full-time father. And it's a very personal story to me that is about faith and mental illness. It is funny how sometimes just doing that little intro at the beginning of the video, for those of you who are just tuning in, becomes kind of difficult sometimes. So sometimes I have to swap things around. For those of you who are familiar, you know I usually do that second bit about it being a personal story and all of that as my second part of the bit. But in this time I did it in the third because midway through the pitch I remembered, oh yeah, I need to tell people a little bit of what it is. I am heading to work. Yesterday I feel like I had a lot of progress on my comic, and now today is Tuesday, and for those of you who are just tuning into the vlog, you'll know that since it's Tuesday, I generally have a day that I like to call Rockville Tuesday, where I play some music with my buddy Josh. Haven't done it for the last few weeks because my buddy's been on vacation, and he's back from vacation, so that means we will be rocking and rolling this Tuesday, which should be pretty fun, and maybe I'll get some footage of it. We'd probably be writing new music, except usually when it's been a couple weeks, we're a little rusty, and so we have to kind of refine and practice the songs that we've already written so that we can still play them. It's the weird thing about music. It's like rehearsing and practicing really does define whether you're going to play well or not, at least for people like me. Maybe there's some people who don't need rehearsal or practice and can just memorize things, but as I get older, memory's not so keen. Remember, this is an old vlog. It's vlog 88, so I need a little jog to the memory here and there. So I'm on my way to work, where I work as an art director. It's a pretty long commute, and so that's part of why I do a lot of these vlogs in my car, because it's a way for me to keep up with the vlog, take advantage of the time that I do have, and also to think about art on the way to work so that when I get home, I'm charged and ready to rock. One of the things that I have been thinking about is limitations and freedom through limitations. So this is a weird idea, especially to young artists, and was always kind of strange to me. And I remember a couple design teachers early on when I was working on my undergraduate as an artist mentioning this random idea, and I just thought it was completely crazy. Turns out it's a whole theory on kind of life in general, and I mean, it even gets into politics sometimes, like where it's like, like I think John Adams was a big believer in this. So the general premise is that most people, when they think of freedom, think of no limitations whatsoever. And so applying that to design, that would mean, like, I have an event poster to do. I have 50 fonts. No one's going to tell me what I can use and what I can't. I'm going to use all 50 fonts. Just like a little introductory idea. So what tends to happen if you have no limitations? That would be a situation where you have no limitations on the amount of type that you can use on your poster. What'll end up happening 99.9% of the time, and the reason I'm leaving that 0.1% is that another basic rule of graphic design and art is that there are rules, but a lot of the time they can be broken, and broken effectively. But in general, the rules pretty much apply. So, anyhow, I'm not going to get too much into that because I'm trying to focus on the idea of limitations. The idea is that if you kind of slap together 50 different fonts, it's not going to look good. It's going to look like really haphazard and kind of sloppy unplanned, maybe even really bad. So in graphic design, most designers learn that you should limit your typefaces to like a maximum of like 3 different fonts. No more, no less. And every once in a while you can have exceptions to this rule, but you need to have really good reasons for your exceptions. Because in general, if you use more than 3 fonts, it's going to start looking less designed. The weird thing is, by putting that limitation of only 3 fonts, it puts you in a box. And a lot of people would think, oh, I don't want my thinking to be stuck in a box. What ends up coming out of that is creativity. You start trying to think of creative ways where you can create an effective poster with only 3 fonts maximum. And you start finding interesting uses for those fonts and ways to balance them out. And next thing you know, you end up with more creative posters and artwork than you would have had if you had used all 50 fonts at your disposal. It's kind of like limiting your palette as a painter. Like, if you guys watch my old series of videos, it's not that old, it's only like 2 episodes ago, on how to do a creepy haunted mansion painting, you'll notice that when I paint with acrylics or with oil paint, I limit my color palette. And a lot of young painters don't do that. What's interesting is a lot of young painters will literally want to have every color at their disposal ready out of the tube. And what ends up happening a lot of the time when they paint is that either what they paint looks like mud, because they've just kind of mixed the whole rainbow in this giant vomitous mass, or it looks like somebody threw up a confetti rainbow on a painting and it kind of clashes. The colors don't have harmony with each other, and you end up with this like chaotic, terrible painting. So limitations like limiting your color palette can be beneficial, because when you limit your color palette, you are forced to work with what you have and come up with creative ways to make colors that you would otherwise be able to get out of a tube. And what oddly enough happens is a lot of the time you end up with more creative colors than you would have doing a painting with colors that are just straight out of the tube. So there's another example. Another scenario where this is pretty common, other than color, like limiting your color, and typefaces, limiting your typefaces. Another scenario where this would be a common factor, having no limitations, would be on comic book pages, which is much more applicable to what I'm working on and what a lot of you guys are subscribed to this channel to see, the comic I'm working on. So a lot of young artists try to get away from the panel, like the grid. Like they usually fall into one of 2 traps. Like, one is they force everything to fit inside of a box so that maybe there's too much limitation. Or number 2, they will try to draw really creative paneling and wind up making pages that are kind of close to impossible to follow because there's no guidelines, there's no grid underlying it. The more you get into panels and comics and graphic design, the more you start realizing that having an invisible grid, and by an invisible grid I literally mean like a grid that you can't see, but it's ruled out. So a lot of the time back in the day, these grids were done in blue line, like non-photo blue. And the reasoning for that was that, you know, when you photocopied it, or, you know, you used a stat cam, it would basically negate all of your non-photo blue lines, and all you'd be left with are these beautiful black lines. Nowadays, with, you know, full color process printing, pretty much available to everyone, you know, non-photo blue isn't necessarily as essential, but the point is, like, grids are like guidelines that, you know, allow you to play in design and yet have your design still come out effective. Having a grid, having panels, having structure actually gives you more freedom. It's one of the weirdest things about art. And the more you get into doing art, and especially doing illustration or graphic design for a living, the more you're going to notice that you're finding little structures that you can create that allow you more freedom. So, limiting choices allows you more freedom. It's kind of weird, but if you go into art with just a feeling of like, I'm just going to make a painting and it's going to be beautiful, and you don't have a theme or a subject, a lot of the time you're going to end up very frustrated, because what you have in your head, this idea of painting something just randomly, just from the gut, that's just beautiful, it's going to fall apart. It's similar with anatomy too. A lot of people just want to draw from their imagination, and they draw from their imagination, and yet they aren't thinking about the underlying structure of the human body. So when they draw a face, like the eyes will be kind of like this, because they haven't drawn a through line to connect the eyes together. It's just a weird thing to me, but it's fascinating how when you draw that underlying structure, when you're then at the later stages in your drawing, you're freer, you have more freedom to create an effective drawing. You know, you see this in music a lot too, where if you just kind of noodle around on the guitar but you aren't playing chords, it doesn't make a lot of music. It's the fact that you have a structure, that you have chords, that you have repeated chords in a certain pattern, to where it creates maybe like a chorus or a verse or a breakdown. It's that little structure that actually gives you freedom in music. Like I said, it's interesting because this is something that I don't find very common with older artists, but with younger artists, a lot of them will look at the grids and look at the structures and look at the rules and kind of feel like, well, I want a world without rules, without structures, without a grid. I want complete freedom. And what they end up being is really confined by a lack of limitation. When you have limits, then you have an idea of how to test those limits, how to kind of push those limits, how to play around within this little playground that you've built, but you've limited your playground to say like sand and a sandbox and a couple of toys. If you have every toy in the world, you're gonna have a lot less fun. The funny thing is, there's science behind this as well, and I'm gonna misquote this, but I think it was like a Radio Lab episode I heard where they had tested these children on their levels of contentment, and what they did was they presented them with 2 candies. This is the first test group, where they present them with 2 candies and say you can pick whichever candy you want, and about 80% of the kids were really happy with their choice because they had picked the candy they want. Oddly enough, when presenting the same like test group, age range and everything, type of children, with the option of making the same choice but then presenting 20 different candies, the kids second guessed their choices because they had and it's a human thing, but they had doubts. The second they made their choice, they felt like they had made the wrong choice because there were 20 other options. So, limiting options can actually increase contentment and actually increase your creative output as an artist, and increase, in the long run, your freedom, because you're not confined by the lack of law or system. Freedom really requires systems, and freedom in art requires systems and structures. And when you have the structures and you have the systems, what you'll find is a lot of freedom within those limitations. This gets me thinking about one last thing, which is I'm working on these little filler strips for quarterly stories, and I was doing them about every lunch, but it's been very busy at work. And so I haven't really been able to get to these at lunch at work. But within those little filler strips, I'm doing 3-panel comics in this style of like Bazooka Joe type comics or wacky packs, kind of the type of art that would have been printed on wax paper back in the day and maybe wrapped a stick of bubble gum. I have limited myself on those strips to basically do them as 3-panel grids. And I've kind of went away from that a few times. Like one time I decided to do an alphabet chart, which, you know, had its own little structure and limitations. But in general, my limitations with that comic are they're a 3-panel grid. They're in the same size. They always have to start with the title header. And then I have pretty much like, once I've put in that title, I have about 2 3/4 panels to work in. And I have to tell a story, preferably that has a beginning, middle, and end within those 2 3/4 panels, which is quite a challenge. But what's interesting is, like, working on that little side project of doing those filler strips, I found a lot of freedom within that structure. Like, within that limitation, I found little ways that I can play with it and ways I can push it, and I'm finding what I can do with it. And the reason that's on my mind is because I've started working on the next filler strip. Now, I might actually have my next comic page done before that filler strip, because like I said, those are things I'm working on at work, and when work is super busy, you got a 30-minute lunch, your time is super limited, and a lot of the time that 30-minute lunch becomes like a 10-minute or 15-minute break where you're just digesting food and then getting back to trying to get everything out so you can leave on time. But the point being, like, limitations can actually be a good thing. Now, one other good thing, with all of this considered, another good thing is to question your limitations every once in a while. Like, maybe the structures you built aren't providing enough freedom. So, like, for instance, maybe you have a color palette that's missing yellow, and you find after playing around and around with your palette that you are really too limited, and you need to have a yellow in your color palette. Sometimes it's good to change the structure, add the yellow, so that you can then have the structure that allows you the most freedom. And sometimes, like in your comics, it's good to break outside of the grid and try something new. But a lot of the time, having that grid is going to give you the freedom and more of an ability to decide intentionally the times where you're going to break the limitations and create new ones. I was going to ask you guys, what are some of the creative limitations that you put on your work that allow you to be free in your work? Or do you guys disagree entirely and feel like, you know what, I'm an artist, I don't need limitations, and I feel most free without any limitations? So let me know in the comments section. In the meantime, I'm going to get to work and bog through this crazy traffic. All right, I will see you guys in a little bit. All right, so heading to my friend Josh's house. Just got home, hung out with Benji for a little bit, and said hi to my wife and hung out with her for a little bit. My sister-in-law is in town, and so I got to talk to her for a little bit. Now it is time to rock and roll. So I really like doing these Tuesday rock sessions. I know I've talked about it before, but they kind of change up the pace of, weeks and like basically routines. And it kind of changes it up, gets me out of the house for a little bit. It's a good excuse to hang out with a good friend, and also to just kind of brush up on some other artistic skills that aren't just like staring at a comic page, laying down ink. I love comics, and I'm very serious about comics, but it's nice to occasionally step outside your comfort zone. If, like, for me, I guess comics are my comfort zone, even though they're insanely challenging and time consuming. Working on comics feels like home to me. Nice to get out of the house occasionally. So anyhow, I'm gonna go rock and roll. I will see you guys in a little bit. Okay, so I'm home from Rockville Tuesday, and I managed to knock out the pencils for panels 4 and 5 of Quarterly Stories, and I'll show this to you now. And I'm gonna get some sleep because it's pretty late. Here's page 49. Here's the panels. Character walks in. Second character walks in. Zoomed in shot. Closer shot with main character in the background.
This should be an even more intimate shot, and then a final intimate shot. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels of page 49 penciled. Pretty much 2 more to go until I'm ready for inks. A pretty productive day. Thanks to those of you who like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube videos. It's really cool. It means a lot, and it's really cool to see the subscription count above 200. It's kind of exciting having seen this thing grow. So I will see you guys next